All right, guys, as you can see, we're here at B-Side Fabrication. We're all super excited about this build, and I can't tell you how long we've been talking about it. Alex and I bought this car literally, I think it was 7 years ago, or maybe 6 years ago. It's been to several different shops over the years, and of course we ran into some challenges taking the car to those other shops, and the ball kind of got dropped. It didn't come out to the standards we were looking for, so we just kind of shelved it. You know, this is not a real 959. This is actually a 1975 Porsche 911S. We bought it this way. We bought it with a 959 kit that someone had already installed on it, and it was a relatively nice looking body, and that was part of the reason why we bought it, was because other replica 959 bodies weren't to the standard this one was. Now mind you, the turbo intake breathers on the quarter panels weren't really up to par in terms of them looking authentic to a real 959, and the front fascia, the entire front fender assembly, the bumper, the headlights, the marker lights, none of that was even close to original. But, you know, we spent thousands and thousands of dollars in labor to address all those issues, and we actually acquired real Porsche 959 headlight buckets and lens assemblies along with marker light assemblies, and then we completely reshaped the fenders. We acquired a real 959 front bumper, and we had to do some work on it since it was damaged, and then we made a mold and we actually finished a front bumper cover that is exactly like a real 959. Outside of the mirrors, there's a few other little details that we need to sort out, one of those being the drip rails themselves. No 959s had drip rails. Early Porsche 911s did in fact have drip rails, so we got to cut these and then spot weld all this in place and then do a weld seam all the way across. Richard's going to take care of that for us as well in terms of perfecting the body. Initially, when we started talking about, okay, what are we going to do with this thing? In 1986, the FIA canceled Group B racing, and as a result, Porsche, who was focused on building this car specifically for the Group B racing series, didn't know what to do. They literally just shelved this car. They built several versions of it, and so everybody was really excited about building this crazy car that was going to perform. So initially, Alex and I thought about just turning it into a very clean, realistic looking 959. And then all of a sudden we started seeing all of these rally cars being built, and a lot of late model 911s, you know, the 964s, the 993s, and even the later 991.2s. You're starting to see 911s turn into rally style vehicles. And as a result of that, we got this crazy idea, screw it, let's turn it into a rally inspired car. Really trying to mimic what, you know, Porsche had originally did with the car series. So if you ask why here, why B-Side Fabrication? Well, it's because, you know, Richard has the knowledge of how to engineer suspension, roll cages, and all sorts of things that are important to the direction we're going with this. And he's got amazing tools at his fingers. Since we've decided to take this to a Group B style racing series car and turn it into a full rally car, it has to be all-wheel drive. And of course, you know, currently it still has its 964 engine in there, along with a G50 all-wheel drive transmission. It does have a front differential. One of the other shops we took it to previously installed a full 993 floor. We acquired the tunnels, we acquired the subframe assemblies, the differentials, we acquired all that stuff. And then, you know, you bring Richard into the equation, and you bring all the guys in the shop. You know, they share a shop with Unrivaled Tuning and Rival Auto Works, and these guys are all JDM enthusiasts, and the stuff that comes out of this shop is mind-boggling, and the quality of their work and the horsepower numbers that they're achieving coming out of here is part of the reason why we spend so much time here. With all that being said, comes...
This is partially Richard's fault. We did plan on buying this motor for my 350Z drift car at the time. Then we pushed it to the S2000. Richard's like, why don't you guys just throw that in the 959? You know that car, you guys want it to be wild. The wildest thing you could do to it right now is put a Type R engine in it. We want a Group B inspired car. So we want anti-lag, we want all the pops and bangs, we want a sequential trans with wheel travel. In more modern days, like a build like that would be Travis Pastrana's Subaru that just went through Gymkhana. That thing has like the gnarliest wheel gap ever, but it's running street set tires and wheels. So with that, we got Hollinger on board to figure out the bell housing, the transmission. They sent us an example of what they offer for the Porsche market already, just because of driveline angles. So they're going to take the science out of it for us and do the bell housing, figure out our clutch setup, our input shaft sizing, our release bearing sizing. All that stuff is all going to be done through them. So we don't have to guess. When we get the transmission, it's going to bolt straight up to this.
So what kind of power are we talking about?
We know it can make 400 all day long. We wanted to run E85 solely, but we are going to switch over possibly to 100 octane. If we can't make all the power on E85, we'll run 100 octane. And we don't have to run dual port injectors, and then we don't have to run Motec and all that stuff. But we're going for 500 or more, reliably.
And that's going to be reliable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this sequential gearbox you're getting is going to mount up to what are we going to use the factory tunnel that's in the car right now?
Yeah, that was the idea. So with Hollinger on board, they said you have the option to figure out your diff lineup. So you could have the input shaft centered coming out of the front of the transmission. You can have your diff angle lower. So if the motor is mounted high, your drive shaft angle going out to the front diff will be in line. It won't be at this ridiculous angle where you need to two-piece the drive shaft or anything. So those are the things that we're going to talk about next week with Hollinger and trying to figure out those aspects of the build before they start drawing out a box. Then we're going to go ahead and send that drawing out, find somebody who could 3D print us the casing so Richard can figure out what he needs to do in terms of getting this mounted in there. Because we know our power levels, we know our RPM span. What Hollinger is going to ask me is, what tire are you going to run and what gear ratio are we going to change the front diff to, if anything. Usually with off-road style cars, you go to a shorter gear ratio because you want it to come off at it, like from a dig, you want it to pull.
You know, let's get Richard in here because I'm seeing something that's really kind of looks like a CNC'd part, and let's get him in here to talk a little bit more about suspension and stuff. What do you think?
What did you get us into? Because this was essentially your idea to throw us into the deep end.
From what I remember originally, Daryl asked me like, hey, we have this car here. What can you do for us? What can we do together? I know the idea of the car originally was something like just make as much as a 959 as possible, but I'm not in the restoration business and I really just want to do cool things. So I knew Alex had this motor, so I threw out the idea of throwing the C1 into the Porsche. Every time we talked about it, it just got a little and a little and a little more extreme. Most Safari builds out there are rear-wheel drive. The car has the potential on the suspension already to be all-wheel drive, even though we're scrapping majority of the suspension and starting from scratch just because we want to add another 6 or 8 inches of travel to the front and the rear. And as far as the package, the engine bay or the rear of the Porsche does not allow a lot of room for, say, something like this, like a K that's a long motor, or that your throttle body faces the rear of the car or the front, which would be the firewall. So with the capabilities we have here, since we're 3D scanning stuff now and starting to engineer a little bit more, we went ahead and scanned this side of the motor and took a product that's already in the market for K motors, and we knew they had a center exit throttle body, and we just designed our own runners for it. So we have our prototype 3D printed runners for a K20C1 that mates up to a K2024 Plenum, and this is kind of where the design work starts. We're gonna chop the car up. Yes, we are chopping the floors. I don't know where things need to end up. I don't know where the transmission wants to sit. This was a car already engineered by someone else, and they already had their locations for their motor, their transmission. I'm not throwing their motor in. I'm not throwing their transmission in. They did an awesome thing. We have Hollinger now. We're gonna have an all-wheel drive sequential transmission. Like, it might be paddle shifted, we don't know yet, but this is kind of where it all starts. Once we hack away, we'll see where it goes from there. Throttle might go through the roof, might go out the fender.
Yeah, because this is flippable, right?
Yeah, we can flip this any direction.
Yeah, so that was the other option with this, is that Skunk 2 offers even plenum spacers, so we could adjust volume as well. So this is essentially a completely tunable part that is still adaptable to this motor now. Because without this 3D printed manifold base, I guess, we wouldn't have been able to run this. There was nothing, there's still nothing available on the market.
Yeah, there's nothing for this yet. I'm sure by the time we're done with this, there's going to be 2 or 3 companies out there with something, but we don't have time for that. We want to get this done as quick as possible.
Yeah, we'll do our own R&D and testing.
Yeah, we have our own things.
So where do we go from here? Richard's actually going to go ahead and pull the stock drivetrain out of this Porsche. It is a 964 3.2 liter motor,
that is fuel injected. We have the harness. It was a fully running drivetrain. The only thing we don't know is what transmission is behind it, whether it's a 1975 5-speed or the more modern, desirable G50 5-speed. He's going to have that pulled out, get it ready for us to sell, so that way we can funnel all that money back into this motor and figure out where we go from there. Hopefully we can move quickly with Hollinger, get a case design that we can 3D print, and start mocking up motor mount ideas, suspension ideas, and just move forward from there. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next one.